Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to my Malaysian Grand Prix review. And a race, guys, that I thoroughly enjoyed. Actually, a pretty decent Grand Prix. We had a good one in Singapore, an average one in Monza, if you can call it that. But a really good race this weekend. Before we get into that, though, let's have a look at the race results. It was Max Verstappen that took his second career Grand Prix victory for Red Bull, ahead of Lewis Hamilton in second place. 12.7 seconds off the Dutchman. Daniel Ricciardo had a solid drive to finish third, quite a way off, but he was catching Lewis Hamilton for quite a bit in that Grand Prix. We'll come on to that just a little bit later on. Sebastian Vettel, a fantastic comeback to finish fourth. Valtteri Bottas, again, absolutely nowhere compared to those ahead of him. He finished fifth, 56 seconds off the lead. Unbelievable. Sergio Perez, again, a solid sixth. Stoffel Van Dorn in seventh there. He's really turning things around, as of Honda, ironically, just recently, but Stoffel Van Dorn in seventh place. Lance Stroll, eighth. Ninth place for Felipe Massa, giving them a double points finish at Williams. Esteban Ocon, he rounds off the points in 10th, and Fernando Alonso just missing out on a point in 11th place. The Haas boys head up the next page with Kevin Magnussen in 12th place and Romain Grosjean 13th. A frustrating day for Haas for sure. Pierre Gasly, a solid debut in 14th place. Jolyon Palmer 15th. Nico Hülkenberg, he had problems and pitted very, very early for new tyres, which really cost him. Had to make a second stop. He finished 16th. Pascal Wehrlein came home in 17th, and once again, bring up the rear, it is Marcus Ericsson. Carlos Sainz unfortunately retired. He was in the points at that point as well, which is such a shame for him. He DNF'd, and Kimi Raikkonen, he did not start with what is unconfirmed as a turbo problem again for Ferrari on what was a thoroughly miserable weekend for the Scuderia. Sebastian Vettel got driver of the day for his drive from 20th to 4th, and the fastest lap is Sebastian Vettel's as well, and that will stand in Malaysia for a very, very long time. That is a 1:34.080, and it is a lap record, of course. So then, Max Verstappen bounced back from the criticism that was wrongly put at his door by some people after the incident in Singapore in the best way possible, with a mature, level-headed, and generally dominant drive in the Red Bull to victory. Fantastic performance from Max Verstappen. He's had his critics of late, and in the past, I've criticised him as well. Believe it or not, I have criticised him in the past, but his drive today just confirmed what everybody's been saying about him for so long. He is such a talent and totally a future world champion. So mature today, so calm. The overtake on Lewis Hamilton was a legitimate overtake, although Hamilton did say in the cool-down room that he just wasn't going to risk it with Verstappen down into turn one for the championship. Obviously, you can kind of understand that from Lewis's point of view. But frankly, Red Bull this weekend were just genuinely faster than Mercedes. Daniel Ricciardo was closing down Lewis Hamilton until the latter stages when he hit traffic and had a bit of a scrap with Sebastian Vettel, but Mercedes didn't really look anywhere all weekend. Whereas Red Bull, on a track where, okay, they did a 1-2 last year because of mechanical problems for Lewis and other drivers, but a track that you wouldn't expect to suit the Red Bull with all the long straights, they managed to win the race and finish third. Fantastic performance from Max Verstappen. Brilliant from Daniel Ricciardo. And from a neutral perspective, absolutely brilliant for Formula 1 as well. And I guess to sum it all up, for Max Verstappen, as soon as he'd taken the lead, he just disappeared. Okay, 12.7 seconds, not the biggest lead we've seen in Formula 1, but he got out front, he controlled the pace, he looked after his car, he looked after his tyres. It was just perfect. Like I said at the start, mature and level-headed, and that is exactly what Max Verstappen's got. Yes, he's got the other side to him. We all know the other side to him, but then you need that as a racing driver. We want to see drivers going wheel to wheel. There's going to be collisions at times, but today, none of that. He was absolutely brilliant, and I can't heap enough praise on him, and I think a lot of people are going to do that in Formula 1 over the coming week as we head towards Japan, of course. Fantastic. In terms of the championship, though, Lewis Hamilton, after all the misery of Friday, probably couldn't have asked for any more than second. If somebody had said to him on Friday, you would finish second in a Red Bull sandwich, he'd have absolutely taken that for sure. Despite Sebastian Vettel's brilliant drive back through the field, he has now extended his championship lead to 34 points. However, this is Formula 1 and things can turn around very, very easily, as we've seen in the past. All it takes is a DNF and all of a sudden that championship is blown wide open again. But he will have taken second, like I say, after the disappointment of Friday, and I think a solid race, if not spectacular from Lewis, but at the moment, that's all he needs in order to get his fourth world championship. But regardless, he had absolutely no answer for Max Verstappen today at all, and I reckon, you know, without the traffic and without that little scrap with Sebastian Vettel, Daniel Ricciardo could have got second today, but it wasn't to be for the Honey Badger. But third place, I think he'd have taken that as well, although with his teammate winning, I was slightly disappointed that he wasn't up there fighting with him, as they were last year, of course. Great race last year, great race this year. Sebastian Vettel did the best he could in terms of damage limitation, of course. Starting 20th to come home in 4th place is absolutely incredible. It really is. He made up most of his positions early on in the race, ended up P11 very, very early, got stuck behind Fernando Alonso for a while, which cost him quite a bit of time, and possibly that moment when you look back cost him a podium. Certainly when he came to lap Fernando Alonso later in the race, that definitely cost him a podium. He fought through, overtook, aggressive but but calculated. A fantastic drive. The fastest guy out there by a mile. Ferrari looks seriously quick. Now, whether that is just track specific, we'll find out in a week's time in Japan. But a brilliant drive from Sebastian Vettel in a weekend that has been a horror show for him and the team. It all started horrifically when it came to qualifying. I mean, practice was fantastic. When we got to the competitive stuff in qualifying, it all went wrong with his turbo problems, his engine problems. Started from the back, came back through, and it all just came together. And that's probably the best he could have got today. But then we had a bizarre incident after the race. A very bizarre incident that I don't think I've ever seen before. He crosses the line, takes 4th place, takes the points. He'll be very, very happy with that. On his cooldown lap, down at turn 5, goes around the outside of Lance Stroll, and the two collide, and it rips the back off his car. And now we're looking at Sebastian Vettel for Japan saying, hang on, mate, you're probably going to need a 5-place grid penalty for a gearbox change now. So as if the weekend couldn't have got any worse, you would expect the cooldown lap Ferrari probably went, oh, thank God that's over. And then, guys, I think I've crashed the car. Not great. Not great for Sebastian Vettel, and just, I think, ends what was a pretty miserable weekend in probably the only way it was ever going to end. Very disappointing for Ferrari, and it's very, very concerning for the rest of the season in terms of reliability, because that Mercedes still looks absolutely bulletproof, and Ferrari, they're almost imploding again, as we've seen in recent seasons. And as much as it pains me to say as a neutral, I do not believe Sebastian Vettel is going to be able to turn this around now. 34 points is too much. I think it is just damage limitation. Try and win as many of the last few races he can to at least put a bit of pressure on Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton. But as long as Lewis Hamilton is cruising around like he is, he's going to cruise to this championship, and he's going to be a 4-time world champion. Sebastian Vettel, has he thrown this away? Yeah, I think he has a little bit, but you can't take anything away from Lewis Hamilton. He was brilliant this weekend, brilliant last weekend, and whatever happens between now and the end of the season, all Ferrari needs to do, first of all, is get their act together and try and put some pressure on Mercedes. Gonna touch on Valtteri Bottas just a little bit here. He has been absolutely terrible. Since he signed that contract extension, he's just been absolutely nowhere. 56 seconds off the lead again today, which is what, 44 seconds behind his teammate. That is absolutely unbelievable. He was solid all season, and everyone, including me, was raving about him, saying he totally deserves a contract extension. But since he's got that contract extension, you could argue he probably doesn't deserve it at the moment. He himself, in an interview with Sky Sports F1, said before the Grand Prix, if the season stopped now, I would be disappointed. It is not what I expected. That is a hell of an admission from a guy that's just signed a 1-year contract extension with the fastest team, of course, in Mercedes. So what has gone wrong for him, I don't know. If it's something in the setup, if it's upgrades that's not agreeing with him, we don't know. I'm sure it's going to come out in the next few weeks for sure. But even Mercedes have voiced concerns about his performance this weekend, and that will worry him. He needs to step it up. He's not going to win the World Championship this year. He's probably, barring mechanical issues for Lewis Hamilton next season, for example, it's unlikely he's going to finish ahead of him in the championship and challenge for a championship over Lewis Hamilton. But the least Valtteri needs to be doing is competing with him, being on a consistent basis with him, as he was earlier in the season, and start beating him at least at odd Grand Prix, because at the moment, he just looks like a bog standard number 2, and that is such a shame because he is a fast and very, very talented driver. But I'm going to leave the Bottas bashing just there for now. Poor guy. I do like Valtteri. It's just such a shame that he's not on form, but I'm sure he will turn it around. I've said it about so many drivers in the past. God damn it, he will turn it around. In terms of the second tier in the championship, like the midfield, Force India took great strides towards confirming 4th place again this weekend. 6th place for Perez, 10th place for Ocon. Williams, in their bid to cling on to 5th, got a double points finish today. Kind of undoing for them Renault's good work in Singapore, because Williams have kind of stretched that gap now over Toro Rosso and Renault, who both failed to score this weekend. That is huge for Williams. They need to get 5th place sorted. They absolutely do. It's looking good for them at the moment, but I still fancy either Renault or Toro Rosso to nick that 5th place off them, because I think when those two finish, Williams are probably behind at least Carlos Sainz and possibly Nico Hülkenberg as well. So a big finish to the end of the season for Williams needed. Like so many, I want to see them finish 5th place. They're going to have to keep pushing as they did today. A disappointing day for Fernando Alonso in 11th, but probably only disappointing because his teammate, once again, as he did last weekend, or the weekend before, of course, in Singapore, finished in 7th place. Fantastic performance from Stoffel Van Dorn. And as I touched upon earlier, it looks as though not only Van Dorn, but also Honda have got their act together out of absolutely nowhere. This was a power circuit for sure in Malaysia, and they were solid this weekend. Very, very quick. Couple of incidents to touch on then. Jolyon Palmer went for a bit of a spin in the Grand Prix after a collision with one of the Haas boys. Absolutely 110% Jolyon Palmer's fault. I don't quite know what he was doing. I think he's a desperate guy at the moment, desperate to be in Formula 1 next year, but he's just doing it the wrong way, and it's another collision. Fernando Alonso made a move on Kevin Magnussen down the inside into turn 2. A bit of wheel banging. There was a little bit of fuss made by Kevin Magnussen, but there was nothing in that for me. It's getting your elbows out. It's racing. It's wheel to wheel. It's what we want. If we start dishing out penalties again for stuff like that, then the sport's going to end up being dull as dishwater, quite frankly. A bit of an old saying there, but yeah, we want them racing. We want them wheel to wheel. So let's just ignore that and move on because that was not an incident at all for me, a nothing incident. Esteban Ocon, he came to blows with Carlos Sainz in turn 1. Again, a bit of a 50-50. You could say Esteban turned in on Carlos Sainz, should have given him more room, but really couldn't have given him much more room other than a car's width and the inside line. So I don't really think there's anything in that. Carlos Sainz, he felt it was Esteban's fault, if you like, but I just don't see it that way at all. And I don't think either driver were really to blame. It was just a racing incident, and that is how the stewards saw it. And just to let you know as well, guys, the stewards have also deemed that the incident between Sebastian Vettel and Valtteri Bottas, not Valtteri Bottas at all. What the hell am I on about? Sebastian Vettel and Lance Stroll at the end of the Grand Prix, or after the Grand Prix had finished, warrants no further action as no driver is wholly to blame. So no penalties handed out, but I have a feeling Sebastian Vettel, as I said earlier, is going to end up with a penalty because of a gearbox change. Never rains but it pours, does it, Sebastian? Absolutely. Just going so wrong for them a minute. It really is. A quick word then on Pierre Gasly's debut weekend. If I was to sum it up in 2 words, it would be solid and consistent. He was decent in practice, decent in qualifying, and had an all right race as well. All right, only P14, but that's where Daniel Kvyat was finishing anyway. Plus, he was crashing the car over the weekend. So I actually think Pierre Gasly has done himself the world of good within the Toro Rosso family for this one. I really do. And I think with the question marks over whether Kvyat's even going to return this season, I think Pierre Gasly has shown Toro Rosso that if they do decide to pull the plug on Daniel Kvyat's career, that he is definitely the driver to take that seat. A very, very solid and consistent weekend from him. Close to his teammate in practicing qualifying, but a little bit off in the race, if we're being honest. But of course, Carlos Sainz didn't finish, so technically he beat him in the Grand Prix. But I think Carlos Sainz, he was in the points when he retired, so would have easily beaten Pierre today. But like I say, a solid and consistent weekend for the rookie. Before I go then, guys, let's have a quick look at the championship tables. Lewis Hamilton has extended his championship lead to 34 points over Sebastian Vettel. And as I said earlier, that looks like that is done and dusted now. Lewis Hamilton on the brink of his 4th world title. Sebastian Vettel really is falling away now. Not a lot he can do if the car's going to keep letting him down though. Valtteri Bottas closed the gap on Sebastian Vettel in Singapore, but has lost ground again here in Malaysia after a very, very disappointing weekend for the Finn. Daniel Ricciardo, he stays 4th, looks good for that now, ahead of Kimi Räikkönen and Max Verstappen with big points after a very disappointing season up to this point. He's on 93. Perez is pulling away from Ocon now, and it is Carlos Sainz and Nico Hülkenberg rounding out the top 10. In the Constructors' Championship then, Mercedes, well, they're gone, aren't they? They've pretty much won that. They look good for their 4th consecutive Constructors title. Ferrari, they're nailed on for 2nd place. They're not going to get caught. Red Bull, they're nailed on for 3rd. Force India are nailed on for 4th. So the fight now is for P5 between Williams, Toro Rosso, Renault, and maybe Haas. You know, they're not far off on 37 points. They do look very, very solid in 8th place. A really good season for them. And who knows, a crazy race and they might be able to get in the mix, but Williams will be desperate after a good weekend this weekend to make sure they hang on to 5th place. As for McLaren, 7th in Singapore with Stoffel Van Dorn, and 7th again this weekend in Malaysia from Stoffel Van Dorn has put them on 23 points. They are well clear now of Sauber and they are nailed on for 9th. Can they catch Haas? It's possible. It's possible with the car performing it is, but we'll have to wait and see. They are definitely going to finish at least 9th though, and Sauber have their 5 points in 10th. But what do you guys think? Did you enjoy the Grand Prix? Did you find it a bit boring? I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. Thought it was a pretty decent race. Actually enjoyed watching some cars come through the field and also some decent scrapping in the midfield. And of course, Max Verstappen taking his 2nd career Grand Prix victory. And also, guys, is Lewis Hamilton about to claim his 4th world title? It certainly looks that way, doesn't it? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I will be back later in the week with another video. And of course, next weekend, it's a Japanese Grand Prix, a back-to-back double header. We do love it when they come round. As ever, guys, thank you so much for watching. I've been Sean. That was the last ever Malaysian Grand Prix. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.